Taxpayer spend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call Catherine Delahunty.
I'm delighted to take a call on this issue because the estimates debate is very important on education, and the last year of spending on education reflects some of the most contradictory policy and priority setting that I have seen since I've been a parliamentarian. It starts right at the top. For example, when the Prime Minister came out and said that he wouldn't be too worried if his children were taught by unqualified teachers. That is right from the very top, a message which is completely at odds with what the Minister has been saying about the importance of professionalism and qualifications and, in fact, reviewing the Teachers' Council registration policy. So what is it that the government's saying? Sure, at King's College, where the Prime Minister's son has been, there's a snowball in hell scenario that they're going to hire unregistered or untrained teachers. It's simply not going to happen. They're going to have small classes and highly qualified staff. Meanwhile, we have the Minister constantly arguing for teachers to improve their qualifications and professionalism. So which one is it? Untrained and unaccountable and publicly funded for-profit charter schools, or professionalism? National standards for students aged 6 years old, but no standards for teachers in selected experimental, not for-profit situations. Let's just talk about charter schools for a minute because it is addressed in the estimates. And the government put aside $230,000 for the Charter School Working Party headed by Catherine Isaacs, clearly not exactly a neutral figure in the eyes of anyone who has anything to do with education or politics. And what that Working Party has said is that they will develop options for schools where there will be public money put in, but people like Destiny can apply. All kinds of people can apply. They can be as fundamentalist, as ideologically driven as they like, and they will not necessarily have to meet the same standards that are expected in public schools, which, when you think it's public money, is pretty appalling. So the Green Party is not arguing that there should not be choice in education. And if people want their children to be taught by fundamentalists of any stripe, or encouraged to believe that homosexuality is a sin, or that climate change is a myth, or that evolution is anti-Christian, for example, then do that, but pay for the privilege. Don't ask us to pay as a country for that privilege. That's what the private school education system offers. We are talking about public money going into a weird experiment that has failed all over the world. And so we're very concerned that this budget reinforces that idea. And we're also appalled by the contradictions between the statements the Prime Minister has made and the statements that the Minister has made on this issue. Let us then move to the other disaster areas in education. The class size one, as my colleague Nanai Mahuta has touched on, was a back down that reflected a long-planned but badly planned vision that nobody except Treasury could give any credence to. And it just shows you what happens when people don't have a vision in education that is not about anything except money. So Treasury wrote the book and said, let's have a plan to actually make this affordable, and let's cut back on education. Let's pretend it's an investment, but actually Treasury could not convince the rest of the country. They had the government on their side, but nobody else. Nobody else. And so we saw fantastic unity across a sector that is not always unified and doesn't always speak with one voice. And so government was forced to do a back down. Well, that's an indication that not but that they learned, and not that they believed the parents were right, but because they realised they couldn't sell it, which was a cynical and depressing scenario, because we asked the Minister whether she had changed her view after hearing from parents, and she said she hadn't. She still thought it was a great idea. Very, very sad for the parents and children of New Zealand that that was the agenda. National standards. Now, they put some information on the website last week, and again, it's a real mess. It's a real cut and paste job. You can't understand what you're reading, and you don't know what it is you're going to get. Sorry, not you, Mr. Chair, what the parents will get, and it doesn't make any sense, because the moderation tool that is being developed at great expense, and about $5 million has been spent so far on developing the work around national standards, but it's not finished. The moderation tool won't be ready till 2014. So what are people going to make of that? The government put up a policy that had no tool for creating any kind of moderation, and then it won't be on offer till 2014, but somehow the parents are going to get the benefit of reading the data that is completely different from school to school. And that is somehow supposed to be softening the parents up for the standards. Now, even if you believe that was a good idea, it's a bad way to have gone about it. But the Green Party doesn't think league tables are a good idea, and we think league tables, Mr. Chair,
Catherine Delahunty.
we think that league tables, Mr. Chair, are for sports teams. League tables are great in the Olympics, but they're not for children. Labels are useful on jam jars, but not on children. And our fundamental problem with national standards is not the way that they are being delivered, but the fact that the idea that a narrow mechanism which reduces the New Zealand curriculum, which is upheld around the world as a valuable and broad curriculum, to a narrow set of literacy and numeracy standards, which is narrowing teachers' requirements to teach to test, no matter what the government says, there is huge anxiety out there. It would be interesting if people listened to the evidence of people like Professor Martin Thrupp, who went to England and looked at the model over there, because some countries have gone around the track and they followed the track of increasing narrowing and teaching to test. Britain is one of them, and others, for example Finland and some of the Asian countries, have gone the opposite way and have invested in a broad curriculum, and the results are very clear. Britain and the United States are failing the children who are already struggling because of poverty and social context, and initiatives like national standards only create anxiety, and they are driving teachers out of the profession, because people become teachers from a sense of moral mission to give an input into children's lives. And children need the best people in this country, and they will be driven out if we narrow what has been established as being an excellent curriculum and turn it into a bunch of mechanisms. And it's lovely to read numbers. It makes life really simple. But guess what? Numbers do not reflect the reality of what the complex matter of each child's individual learning is actually about. And I wonder whether the government actually looks at what learning means instead of what numbers mean when they set up these standards, because they are absolutely incapable of delivering a rich and contextual, which is what the Minister calls them, information to parents. And it's a sad sight when we see this being justified on a daily basis in this House. It is not what people voted for at all. They voted for the idea of our kids all doing well, and what they got was this mechanistic, failed system that's incoherent and hasn't even been properly moderated. And quite frankly, that, along with class sizes in charter schools, is an unmitigated disaster. And what is also a disaster is the lack of coherence in the government's way of relating to the sector. You cannot improve children's learning unless you have good relationships, not only with child and teacher, but also with teachers and politicians. And I'm not saying that teachers always get it right, but what I'm saying is declaring war on the education sector and the academics and the professionals is not the way in which you make change happen. We all agree that there are kids who need more support in school, and some of us know that's because the goal of the school system should be equity. The Finns are at the top of the piece of table, Mr. Chair, because the goal of their education system is not achievement, it is equity. Equity comes first, then participation, and then achievement. But why listen to the experts? After all, the Finns have many good models which we would do better to look at than looking at Britain and the United States, where we have these bizarre failures. Florida, Hurricane Katrina has turned into an educational disaster, because what happened is that public schooling has collapsed because of the disaster. They have brought in these experimental charter schools, these for-profits, and as a result you have children falling through the cracks in greater numbers than ever before. And that, Mr. Speaker, is a tragedy. And we must make sure that we do not let what has been a good education system become a game for the Treasury, an experiment for the government, and a sacrifice of the good things under the fake mythology that what we need is running schools like our business. What we need, Mr. Chair, is to run education like it's for liberation, for life, for lifelong learning. It is not a mechanistic business, Mr. Chair. It's a mission, and we should take on the Finns' ideals, which is that not everybody can be a teacher. They invest a huge amount in teacher training. They say that if you want to lift the quality of the education system, Mr. Chair, you must lift the quality of the people who are allowed to be teachers. And so instead of saying the most fabulous job you can have is to be a corporate financial speculator or a some kind of merchant banker, or the idea that being a lawyer or even an MP is the best job in the world. The best job in the world needs to be a teacher, and then we will get the quality of teaching, or both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, I'm very pleased to speak in this